Uh, Hello, welcome back to Azure Back to School. My name is Arindam Mitra, and I am one of the speakers in Azure Back to School. Uh, Extremely thrilled and delighted to be one of the speakers in Azure Back to School. Big thank you to Dwayne and Derek for the opportunity provided. Much appreciated. Before I start with my session followed by my demo, I would like to introduce myself. Um, so this is a little bit about me. My name is Arindam Mitra, as I stated. I have a role of 16 years of experience. I'm right now working as an Azure Solutions and DevOps architect. Um, I moved into cloud 5 years back, around about, I mean, like around about, and I started my first year with AWS, and then I moved to Azure Cloud. Here you can see that I mean like I have my blog link. I'm available on LinkedIn, Twitter, Sessionize, GitHub, Facebook. My email address are also stated. I mean, like, if you want to get in touch, if you have any questions, queries which I can address, feel free to write me. Here is the overall stats about myself. Like, I have almost published 20 blogs. I mostly write in Azure DevOps, automation, pipelines, GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, PowerShell, AZ CLI, Terraform. So these are my core areas, and these are my areas of expertise. And I typically write infrastructure as code. I have, as I said, I have already published 20 blogs, and I have already spoken in seven different platforms. I mean, like, seven different topics and seven different platforms. I have overall served five communities, including Journey to the Cloud, Pakistan community, Azure Zurich user group, Wells user group, and Azure Burn user group very recently. So this is a short summary of mine. Today, in my session, I'm going to present about Azure DevOps and how you can create Azure DevOps project and set up all the best practices using DevOps CLI and REST API. And that is why I call this whole um, blog session as Power of DevOps CLI and REST API. I started to do this automation when I got really tedious and doing the same repetitive work. Like, there's always requests coming from developers that, oh, I need DevOps project for my code repository, or maybe code repository and pipelines. And every time I provision a DevOps project, again I have to manually go and set up each and every settings, like, which could bring benefit to them in their day-to-day use. And it was really getting tired, getting a little bit tired, in sense that, the same mundane work, same repetitive work. So that is where I started to automate the DevOps project creation, along with all the configuration settings and best practices. And that is why, this was very important, and I felt that, I should be contributing to the community if somebody can benefit from the same thing. So I have a full-fledged demo. I will show you everything live, how I did it. Of course, a lot of things can be done out here, um, but I'm just going to show you that how you can automate most of the tasks using DevOps CLI and REST API. Before I proceed, this is my LinkedIn profile. You can connect with me, and like, you can see I normally publish all my blogs and everything over LinkedIn and Twitter. So feel free to connect with me. Feel free to share your views on my blogs and my code. Happy to have any feedback. Same with the same thing is like with Twitter. You see that this is my profile, and here I normally tweet mostly about my blogs, and whenever I write, I normally tweet it around it. I also have a Sessionize profile. This is my speaker profile. Where as soon as I publish a blog, the next thing I do is I update my speaker profile, so that, when I'm applying for any speaker sessions with different communities, they can validate my work, they can see what I want to speak, and if that is helpful to the community. So this is how I maintain maintain my blogger and speaker profile. And of course, I have already showed you my GitHub profile, and here in my GitHub profile, you already will find the session which I am presenting, which is Power of DevOps, CLI, and REST API. So here is the complete code and a little bit README file. Okay, cool. So moving to the to my session. So as the session states, it's mostly about how you're creating a DevOps project with setting up the best practices and configuration. And this I'm doing it with the DevOps CLI and REST API. Why I'm using REST API is very simple. That there are a lot of functionality which I wanted to create in DevOps project, but in order to create that functionality, the commands or was not available in DevOps CLI. And then I started to dig a little bit more deeper, and then I found that I can achieve that with a combination of REST API and DevOps CLI. And this is where the REST API came to my rescue. So if you scroll to my topic, I have already presented this topic in 2 different platforms. One is Journey to the Cloud, and then I also got an opportunity to do and run this workshop of mine in Azure Burn user group. So this was an in-speaker session like a couple of weeks back, and today I am also presenting it in Azure Back to School. So so here you can see that what exactly my pipeline is doing. The first thing which my pipeline is doing is it's installing the DevOps CLI extension in my build agent, and then it is validating the DevOps CLI extension installation by running the help command, followed by displaying the pad token. This is not at all a mandatory task. I added this task because I'm taking the pad token as a user input, which means that I am declaring it as a DevOps runtime variable. That is why I get the opportunity. I give the opportunity to the user to feed in the pad token in case if they don't want to store elsewhere. What is the purpose of the pad token? PAT again stands for Personal Access Token. What does it do? In order for you to create a DevOps project and then do appropriate settings or configuration inside the DevOps project, these things require elevated permissions, and in order to have that elevated permissions you need PAT. So we generate a PAT token, we give full access of the DevOps organization, so that that PAT token, with the help of the PAT token, we can do the necessary steps which we would like to do using Azure DevOps. Then we create DevOps project, followed by setting it as a default. We set the DevOps organization and the created project as default. Then we create repositories. And once we create repositories, we initialize the repositories. Okay, unless and until you initialize a repository, you'll not be able to check in and check out the codes. Then we create pipeline folders. Pipeline folders are again essentials to create the logical boundaries between different pipelines which you are running for different use cases. Because sooner or later, when you have one DevOps project, which is where you have a lot of codes and you're running like innumerable pipelines, it's very difficult to identify which pipeline states or which pipeline is for which use. And then the pipeline folders comes to your rescue, and it actually gives a logical boundary, or I'd rather say a demarcation, that okay, like project A, it's the pipeline of project A is under the project A folder, project B, pipeline of those are in the project B, and so on and so forth. And this I will show you meanwhile what I mean by it to have a better understanding. Then we create pipeline environment. Pipeline environment is again required only for one sole reason, and that is when we are deploying Azure services using DevOps pipeline and Terraform, you need to have an approval gate. So you would like to keep approval gate, and in order to keep an approval gate, you need pipeline environment because the approval gate is attached to the pipeline environment. Then we create, of course, the agent pool, where inside which the build agent will sit. And then we have the policies, like minimum number of reviewers, check for linked work items, limit verge types, check for command resolution, and code reviewers. So these are typical, I would say, the policies which are applicable to the main branch, which is our source of truth, and and this is what we are going to enable per repository in the main branch. Okay, so this is exactly what we are going to do. Our code repository, as I showed, everything is there in my GitHub. You can feel free to fork it, clone it. If you like it, I would request you to follow my work, my Git repository, and then you get to know what and when I'm writing or when I'm posting. Then this is a whole code. This is a whole pipeline. I have put it here in the blog as well, in case if somebody wants to review, somebody wants to review the whole pipeline code logic. This is how the pipeline runtime variable looks like. So you will be asked for a path token. The DevOps organization is again pre-populated, so you don't have to change. The DevOps project name is again user input. Feel free to change it, and you will be like by this name the DevOps project will be created, and lastly the DevOps project description. Okay, so this is how. So now in this the latter part of the blog, here I take every part of the pipeline. I try to explain the reader that what it is doing. So the first is again the pipeline runtime environment. So these are user input variables, which is asked during the pipeline execution. Now I move to the variables part, where I have all those variables defined, which is required. Okay, and then basically this is the pipeline result. This is how, if the pipeline is successful, when we are running it, you will see, if the pipeline is successful, you will see that all the steps get executed successfully, and then we review in the portal. Okay. So yeah, this is all about, and then we have all the scenarios where we are checking, and this is what we are going to do practically. That is why I'm not demonstrating in the blog, but rather we will do it, and then you can see it, that how it looks like. Okay. So coming back to my Git repository, a little bit about the code. So yes, we talked about the runtime parameters, we talked about the variables. Here are the variables and everything. I'm using Ubuntu latest. I'm using the Microsoft hosted build agent. I'm not using self-hosted or any container as a build agent, but I'm using the Microsoft hosted build agent for the purpose of demo. So you see that this is a single stage pipeline, and this stage has multiple tasks. So the first task is like installing DevOps CLI in the build agent. Okay, so so this is what we have to do, and then once it is done, then probably what we do is we run the help command, so that this is validating whether the DevOps CLI extension has been installed successfully or not. Then what we do is we display the path token. This I wrote at the time when I was writing the pipeline. This was more like a check which I'm doing for myself, to see whether the path token, which is provided as user input, are we able to capture in a variable and then display during the pipeline execution. So even if you remove this task, from line 80 to 84, even if you remove it, it doesn't matter. The pipelines will still run smoothly. Now then we move to the next task, which is creating DevOps project. This is what DevOps project is getting created, and you see that all the name, description, organization is coming from the runtime variables. Then we are setting the created DevOps project and the DevOps organization as defaults. Then we move to creating repositories. You see that I'm creating 2 repositories, but in the final output, when we see in the DevOps organization, there will be 3 repositories which gets created. This is very important to note, that when you are creating a DevOps project, then whatever name you specify, with the same name, a repository is created by default. Okay, so here I am already creating 2 repositories. One is this, and then again this one, infrastructure and application. and one comes by default. So ideally, there are three repositories. We will see in the demo in a short, in some time. And then all the three repositories we are initializing it. So here you see that we have three blocks. One block is this one, the second block is this, and the third block is this one, which means that we are initializing all the three repositories. And then you also see that I have like few of the git configuration commands. So the first two commands are the standard git commands, or the git configuration command, which states that you're initializing the git with the user's name and the user's email address, and that is also coming from the variables which we have to define above. The last two lines which I select out here, this was a part of troubleshooting. So during the time when we were trying to initialize a repository through the pipeline which is running in the build agent, we were getting some errors, which is also documented in my blog. We will run through that. And as a part of troubleshooting, I did some research and I found that these commands are also necessary for you to initialize the Git repository seamlessly. So moving to the next one is like creating pipeline folders. This is what we do. And then we create the pipeline environment. As you see that, in the pipeline environment, the pipeline environment and the agent pool, for these we don't have Azure DevOps CLI commands. And that is why I use REST API. And then, using the Azure DevOps invoke command, I am then creating the pipeline environment and agent pool. See out here. And this is the JSON which I'm creating. So the structure is exactly the same when you are creating an pipeline environment or an agent pool. It's exactly the same. And then finally, we move to the policy part where we are creating all the policies. Now in the above we have three repositories as stated, right? So it means that each repository has a main branch, which means that three repository means three main branches. So for all those main branches, all the three main branches, these all policies will be applicable. Okay. And finally, we have the code reviewers. This is also a part of the policies which we are setting. So code reviewers limit merge types, like check for comment resolution, and of course check for the link work items. All of this are part of policies, and this is applicable to all the main branches in each repositories. Okay. On this note, now I will move to the demo part, which is the interesting part, because we have seen that we have seen the blog, we have seen the code repository. Now let's move to the demo. But before I move to the demo, I just wanted to show you one thing which is really important. These test cases we can review it later. You see in the blog, I have captured the screenshot that what error I got and why I put this command. So I've tried to put together the reason behind why I put this command, and you have the screenshots out here. Same for the git push and everything. So so everything which I have done, I've tried to the best of my knowledge put down in my blog so that it is easy for you guys to follow. Cool. So I'll keep my blog here, and now we move to the DevOps CLI demo. So here's the code in my DevOps repo. I have the same code which I showed you in my Git repository, and now I go to the pipelines. Once I go to my pipeline, I will click on all, and then I will go to the appropriate folder. Now I told you that what was the purpose of the folder. At that time I was explaining you more verbally. Now you can see it, and then you can realize. So now you see that I have different automations in place, right? And I'm running it as a pipeline. And for each of the use cases, I have folders. So this gives me a very clear indication that, if I have to run the DevOps CLI pipeline, I go to the DevOps CLI folder. If I have to do something with B2C, I go to the B2C folder. So it gives me a very, very logical boundary, and it makes my life a little bit easy that whenever I'm going to pipeline, I'm not seeing that whole exhaustive list and then I have to select that, oh, what was the last pipeline I ran, or which was related to which use case. So this comes very handy. So now, without further discussion and kind of things, so I would now run the pipeline, which is, I'll go back, I think I was in the right, but I just want to be sure. Yes, so go here, then move this for here. Again, I have to move it because when the pipeline will run. But for now, So here in this whole graphical user interface, you see that the pad token is again user input. The DevOps organization is pre-populated, so this is pre-populated. So you don't have to change anything because this is not going to change unless and until you are creating a different organization. Till that time, it is not going to change, and then you provide the DevOps project name and the DevOps project description. So for the purpose of this demo, I have already generated a pad token, which I will just copy and I will just paste it here. Okay, and I'll keep the project name as same, and this is a test project. Get some description, and now I will run the pipeline. So let's move it here, and now we wait that what we see. If you see on the left hand side, I have tried to keep it as simple as possible in sense like how you are reading it, so that you can able to correlate that, okay, in this particular Azure DevOps project stage, what is each task doing. So this is extremely important to understand, and we went through this whole task in the beginning of our session that what it is doing. So this is like it is proceeding step by step, that how it is being running and what all it is doing. So again, just to repeat what I said earlier, it is installing the DevOps CLI extension first in the build agent, followed by validating the DevOps CLI, followed by displaying the pad token, which is optional, you can remove it, followed by DevOps project creation, creating repository, initializing repository, creating pipeline folders, creating pipeline environment, agent pool, followed by the policies for the main branch. Okay. And as you can see that the whole pipeline executed successfully. Let's take a quick look here that, let's see, we see that, okay, you see that in the output, there is AM001 folder got created. Now if I go to repositories, you see that there are 3 repositories which got created. So this is extremely important that we create those, we understand these things, and then we have to initialize this repository. So all the 3 repositories got initialized. Then pipeline folder, again, 2 folders got created. Pipeline environment, it got created. Agent pool, it got created, and all the policies which got created. Now, let's see in the graphical user interface in the DevOps organization that how does it look. So I click on the organization. Once I click on the organization, you see that earlier I had AM Cloud and Mitra as a DevOps project. Now I have AM001. I click on this. Once I click on this, this itself is a validation that the DevOps project creation was a success. Now, let's start with the repo. Once I start with the repo, I told you that when you create a DevOps project, the name of the project, the same name, there is a repo created. You see, I created a project name AM001, and now you have a default repo. And if I click on this, I have 2 more repos because these 2 I created and this came by default. So this is all the 3 repos. Now if I click on AM001, which is a default repo, you see that there is a README file which says that repo name is equal to am001. So this is what I meant by initializing the repo. So what I did is, like, I just added a README file in each of the repos to initialize it so that it is ready for all check-in and check-out of code. Let's review it. If I go to AM001 application, you will see that it has a README file with this text, again the name of the repo. And if I go to AM001 infrastructure, you see again this like a similar README file, and it has AM infrastructure, the name of the repo. So we created the DevOps project. We created the repository. We initialized the repository. Now, the next step is we go to pipelines, and here you see that we have pipeline folders which we created, one by the name of application, another by the name of infrastructure. So now we have the pipeline folders. Now we go to the pipeline environment. When we go to the pipeline environment, you see that I have created a pipeline environment called agent. And when I said that you can put approval in place, you can simply click on environment. You can click on the three dots on the right, check approval and check, and you can click on this approval and you can configure the approval. Okay, so this is what I meant by attaching the approval to the pipeline environment. Now if I go to the project settings and if I go to agent pool, you see that I have an agent pool name in AM pool 001. So if I click on this one, this is my pool, and here inside this you can have your build agent attached to this pool. Okay, so this is again done. Now last but not the least is the branch policies, the policies which we created. So if I go to repositories, right, I have 3 repositories. Now if I click on AM001, right, and if I scroll down a little bit down and I go to security, okay, sorry, I go to policies. Okay, once I go to policies, you see that here in the bottom I have the main branch policy. So if I click on main out here, now you see that I have enabled all the branch policy for the main branch for each repository. So you see that the minimum number of reviews is 2. What will happen when a new change is pushed? If linking the work items is required, if the comment resolution is required, what are the limit merge types I have allowed. Here I allowed everything. You can have a basic merge, squash comment, or a rebase, or a rebase with merge. You can do anything, right? And then you also have a code reviewer, which was also part of the build policy. So if I click on this one, you see that our Mitra is already added, and according to the policy it is required, and approving your own changes is allowed. Now you see that this is for AM001. Let's check if it is also done for AM001 application repo. So I go here again, I go to policies, I go to main branch. It is the same. So exactly same like the previous repository. Let's check if it is there in AM001 infrastructure. So there in policy, again you go to main, and then you see that this is the exact same policy. This is what I explained here in my blog. If you see in my blog and everything, that everything I have tried to explain here, what I showed you in the demo, you will have everything here. You see that you have the DevOps project created, and then you have all the 3 repositories which is initialized, and when it is initialized, every repository has a README file. And then I already explained you that why I added those commands in my pipeline, because when I faced those errors, I have taken those screenshots for you guys to also review it, and why I added this command, I have given a logical justification. And then the pipeline folders, and the agent pipeline environment and agent pool, how I created, With REST API, all the documentation link is mentioned in my blog. This is the pipeline environment which I showed you, followed by the agent pool and followed by the agent policy. So, so I mean, like, you have everything here in my blog. I ran the whole demo for you just so that, you can understand everything, what I do. Of course, there is a lot you can do. You can extend this automation to any level. This is not the only configuration. There are also other configuration which you can add. So feel free to enhance the code. Feel free to use the code. I hope that this can minimize a little bit of your your task as well if you have similar problems like me. And this is all I wanted to show you, that this is what I meant by power of DevOps, CLI, and REST API. There are also other ways of developing this automation, but I found this extremely useful. It solved a lot of problems. It also helped me to automate the regular task. So, saying that, that's it from my side. This is all I wanted to present. Again, very, very happy that I got the opportunity to present my work in Azure Back to School. And I hope that you enjoyed the session. I hope that you learned something from me. And feel free to drop feedback, comments. If you like my work, I would humbly request you to follow me on GitHub, follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter. Check my blogs, like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. So see you. Bye-bye.